Good evening, everyone. Welcome back to Eloquent English Enterprise. And thank you so much for your heartening comments which you've given for the previous video on the usual, errors we tend to commit while speaking or writing English. And at the onset, I wish to welcome my new subscribers. Thank you so much for being on board. And this just shows that my old subscribers had a lot of faith in me, and that's how they've asked some new people to join. So thank you to my old team, and of course, a big welcome to the new subscribers. Now, I had promised in the last video that I'll be coming up with a series on cognitive skills, right? But I could not make a presentation which, I myself was not very happy with what I've made. And too long an absence from the channel also is not okay. So I'm back today with something which a few teachers in Bangalore had questioned me about, and that is how to teach poetry in school. So what I'll do is I'll not start with the very young ones. I'll start with middle school. Okay, how to teach poetry to your students in middle school, right? That is classes, maybe you can take 5th to 8th. All right. Usually we include 6th, 7th, and 8th, but I feel 5th, the children or the students of 5th grade are also mature enough to understand the implications or the nitty-gritties of poetry. So basically, or initially, when we get into a classroom to teach them poetry, we straight away start off, this is the title of the poem, and this is the poet, and this is the meaning, and we read it and we explain it. But after a lot of research, after going through a few demonstrations on the net and otherwise, and after collection of a lot of data, I have come to this conclusion that before we start off, before we start actually with the particular poem, it is important. In fact, it's mandatory to first let the children understand what poetry is all about. So first of all, before we start off with any poem in particular, let us first make our children understand the difference between poetry and prose. All right, what are the basic differences? So that's the first point. Then we have to first make them understand what are the salient features of a poetry or a poem, of poetry in general, not a poetry, of poetry in general. So that is verse, meter, rhyme, and a few more things, and stanzas. How do we make stanzas? That is, how do we categorize them as per the number of lines included in each stanza? Okay. So meter would be a little too early for the younger ones to understand. What they have been made to understand since their childhood or the earlier years of teaching is that anything which rhymes is poetry. No, that is just rhyming. Poetry is all about the construction of lines with a certain number of syllables in it. And it has to be something which, it takes from one point to another. Some students have written, a few stanzas and shown me, and they think that they've written excellent poetry. But frankly, it's just rhyming that they've done. Some of the lines are too long, some are too short. So that's not the real way of writing poetry. And this is the time when we have to make them realize that. We have to make them understand. So firstly, we have to make them understand what are the salient features of poetry. And then we come about teaching them, or maybe, you can sort of reverse the action. Initially, you may teach why poetry is important. Why do we teach poems to them? Okay. And so once they've understood the reasons why poems are taught in class or in school, and then what are the features that they have to keep in mind. Okay. And even before starting again, it's better to teach them certain poetic devices Teach them the simple ones like similes, metaphors, personification. These are the ones which they will easily understand. Sorry. Okay. Sorry, there was a little disturbance. So I was I was saying that firstly, before we start off with the poem per se, we have to teach them why we teach poetry, why is it included in syllabus, the salient features, and then a few poetic devices which are easy to understand. If we start teaching them the transferred epithet and all that, it's going to be difficult. Though onomatopoeia, it sounds difficult as a word, but it's one of the easiest again to understand. The buzzing of bees, the twitter of birds, the crash of glass, the falling of an earthen pot on mud. So these are the simple ones that can be taught initially. All right. Now, you remember when we were kids and when our children were very small, or the students that we teach today, we were told to recite. And when you have to recite, you have to learn, you have to remember, you have to memorize those lines. So as a student, I used to hate it. I said, why are we supposed to memorize? In fact, I remember when we were taught Julius Caesar in class 9 and 10, we were to memorize the entire play, because the questions used to be, from which act and scene have these lines been taken? Who are the speakers? To whom is the speaker addressing these lines to? So till we knew the entire play by heart, we could not have answered such questions. All right. And it's not just that. There were some poems like The Pied Piper of Hamelin, Tiger, Tiger, Burning Bright. So all these we had to memorize. And why? Now today, as a grown-up person, I realize that memorization of poems or any part of your text is something which sharpens your mind. It sort of makes your mind click. It polishes your retention power. So it's very important to make them learn a few lines, if not a very long poem. Like if it is something like The Ancient Mariner, it's going to be very difficult. It's going to be tough for them to remember. But shorter poems like The Tiger and The Inchcape Rock, it has about 5-6 stanzas. So these short poems, which can be easily memorized by students, we must definitely encourage the memorization and recitation of poems in class. And also how to recite a poem, what expressions are required, how should your pronunciation go. Again, I remember I had a senior with the name of Poonam Raghunath. I'm sure my classmates would remember if they see this video. She was absolutely fantastic when it came to recitation. There was a competition and she recited the Lochinvar. I mean, the poem Lochinvar. And the way she recited, the way she went about, the way her expressions and her intonation changed, it was wow. So these are the things which people can never forget. I haven't forgotten. She was my senior. I was probably in class 6, but I can still actually see the thing happening, and I can hear her voice resonate in my mind. So that's how, if you have to make your mind sharper, if you have to make your students think and to make their retention better, it is important. It's really, really important to make them learn these poems or some part of their text, right? Okay, now coming to how to go about teaching a poem in class, I'll go through very quickly. The finer versions I'll discuss in part 2 of the video, because I don't want to make it boring. Okay, so I have a few points written with me. I'll discuss them one by one quickly. Just about 5 points are there. So let's see what these are. Okay. Firstly, I've already told you what are the differences between stories or prose or poems and why are poems important. Then start with certain poems which are manageable. I mean, they are simpler. Because if you start off with something really difficult, I mean, as a teacher, we all know, or as teachers, we all know that we have to go from simple to complex, from easy to tough. So here also, let's start off with simple poems and tell them that there's a difference between poems and nursery rhymes. Okay. Humpty Dumpty sat on a wall, Humpty Dumpty had a great fall is fine. It's okay for infants, for small children. Okay. But when you grow, then you have to become more serious and you have to see what a poem is trying to convey to you. For example, on killing a tree, it teaches you that trees are important. They are not to be cut. If you study The Night of the Scorpion, you learn how universal and how encompassing is the love of a mother. She prays that, thank God the scorpion bit me and spared my husband and children. So we have to actually see the sense behind it, the thought behind a certain poem. Not necessarily its words or how were they rhyming and all that. No. So start with poems which convey a meaning and also which are manageable. Then, if possible, show them certain videos or show them certain pictures so that children can understand, because a small child is not able to visualize. For example, if I'm teaching stopping by woods on a snowy evening, let's just bring a kind of a scenery or a picture to class and show them what does a wood or what does a forest look like when it is snowing on a wintry evening, and how can you visualize horses, little ponies with bells hanging from their necks. So when you visualize, you make them visualize things, it's easier for them to comprehend. Then you as a teacher have to read them out aloud with proper intonation, with proper expression, because if you don't, like for example, I'll take up Lochinvar. So when Lochinvar comes, to the ballroom and he picks up the bride, he begins to dance. So there's one line, and the bridegroom stood dangling his bonnet and plume. And you can bow your head down to show how distressed he was. He didn't have the guts, he didn't have the bones to stop Lochinvar from taking away his would-be bride. So expression is really important. I am not able to convey as such. But coming to, say, Julius Caesar, I remember, because I'd learned so many years back, I've not been able to forget. Hence home, you idle creatures, hence you home. Is it a holiday? What? Know you not? You ought not walk upon the road on a laboring day without the sign of your profession. So this is how our teacher had started with Julius Caesar so many years ago. So expression and correct pronunciation is mandatory for a teacher to know before she starts off with any particular poem. Of course, Shakespearean language is very different from the usual language we use in schools. Okay. So include poems written for young children. Whatever is there in the syllabus, you cannot do away with it. But just to inculcate interest, if you can recite a few poems, if you can just recite a few poems of your favorite poets, it would be nice. And always remember, never convey wrong things to your children. I have had so many teachers in my circle who have told me that The 7 Ages of Man is a poem written by Shakespeare. I'm sorry, it's not a poem. It is just an excerpt from As You Like It by Shakespeare, of course, but it is not a poem. It's a speech by Touchstone, the jester. So never give them a wrong context, because if you do so and they come up with the right one, you will cut a very sorry figure. And the last point is that and this is for this particular session, when you have finished with the poem, you must discuss the vocabulary, discuss the new words which have been introduced. And the most important thing, when you are teaching any poem, when you're teaching poetry, do not explain it line by line. You just have to recite the stanza and give them the sense of the entire stanza. give them the understanding. What does this mean? If you are teaching the solitary reaper, then try to make them understand that music is also something which is very attractive. If you have those kinds of ears, if you have that kind of understanding, then you will understand the beauty of this particular stanza. So when we teach them poetry, we generally tend to brush up their aesthetic sense. And that's what our teachers used to do so many years ago. So for today, I've just discussed the basic points of poetry teaching. Now I'll come up with a few more essentials of teaching poetry in middle school, and then we'll graduate to senior classes, because that is different. And then we have to probably, we have to have a critical appreciation of poems in senior classes. So that's different. Here in the middle school, it's just basic question and answer, something on vocabulary, something on poetic devices being used. So for them, this much is good enough. But when we go to senior classes, then the scenario is different. So that I'll deal with in the next video. Thank you so much once again, all of you viewers, wonderful people. And do let me know, should I start with cognitive skills, or would you want me to take up another topic? Because I don't want to do anything which will not be of any use to you. So if you'll be kind enough, please do write down in the comment box, what would you want me to continue with in the next few videos. So this one is my 51st video. I wish to complete 56 before the end of the year. I hope I'll be successful, because I started in January. So my first anniversary, I should be happy that I have uploaded at least 56 videos. That is on an average 1 per week. And they should be relevant to your teaching. They should be relevant to what you are doing in your school. So I'll be waiting anxiously for your comments. Please be kind enough to jot down something in the comment box. So till the next video, it's bye-bye. Take care and have a wonderful week ahead of you. Thank you.